I guess we probably need to click go live. Going live, you're live. Okay, yeah, hit go live at the top. All right, I think we're almost there. We might even be there already. Let's see if I can double check. Back to this page. Yeah, this is running now. Okay, so I'll paste this in the chat, although I know a couple of you are here already. This is deep dive link on YouTube. Oh, I think I just put it twice also because I pasted it again. That's all right. Okay. Okay, so now I know. Schedule, create the scheduled event, and then that's really the key that I needed. Create the scheduled event, and then everything on the restream side hooks into it. Okay, so I'll remember that, and we should go smoother next week. Okay, so I know there's a couple folks here already. Let's do a quick introduction. Let me just real fast also shuffle my windows around a little bit so that I can actually see all of the chats here. Okay. And okay, the one other thing actually is we're going to pop this out. And then I need to try to find this window name here. Okay. Can we make... Okay, yeah, this thing. I remember this from the other day when I tried to do... Can I make this go away? Will it scroll off, or... Okay, yeah, it looks like it'll scroll off after we get a little bit more. Okay. Which is less delayed. Because YouTube does captions, that makes sense. They have to do processing and everything. Okay, so let me do a quick introduction, and then I'll do some hellos to everybody that we've seen. So hello to everyone. My name is Tim. I go by Foamyguy on GitHub and Discord. This will be the deep dive stream. As I'm sure most of you are aware, Scott is taking some time off, and I am filling in to do the deep dives, and this is the first one. As you can probably tell, we had a little trouble getting set up, but we're ready to go now. If you are watching this live, you can go to the Discord, which is linked down this way on the screen, adafru.it/discord. That is where the chat that is on the screen is coming from, along with also the YouTube chat is right below me as well. So head there and you can ask questions or chat with all the folks that are watching along. There is also chat on Twitch. I will say right now I don't have the Twitch window up, so I can pull that up maybe here in a few minutes and try to keep an eye on it as well. But I would encourage folks, the best place to go if you want to chat, in my opinion, is the Discord. That's the place that I have kind of the closest eye on, and that's the place where you can ping me if you wanted to get my attention. So I would say head to the Discord first. Hey, stop fighting. Excellent. Okay, we've got a cat showdown. Haven't set up the cat cameras yet, but right now they would be like a cat showdown camera. Hopefully they'll chill out. If you're watching this in the future and you don't know what we're talking about in this stream, we're going to be dealing with CircuitPython stuff, so this is a good place to start if you want to learn more about this, circuitpython.org. This is basically an implementation of Python that runs on tiny computers, much like this one right here, which is a PyPortal device. On the back of here, there is a chip which is basically a tiny computer for all intents and purposes, and we can write Python code, save it onto this device just as a thumb drive. So this is connected to my computer as one of these CircuitPy drives right here, and we can just save and update to the code.py file in there, and it will run the new version on our device. So the main, there's all different shapes and sizes of these different microcontrollers. A little bit farther on CircuitPython.org here, there's a bunch of them in the background. This one is a PyPortal. It's, sort of claim to fame, if you will. The nice thing about this one is that it has a nice big screen on it. It also has a touch overlay. So today I'm going to do some stuff with displayio and graphical inputs. So I figured this would be a good one to use, but there are many different shapes and sizes, ranging from, ones with screens, ones with lots and lots of I/O pins, ones made for alligator clips, ones with, rubbery little buttons with LEDs inside of them. All kinds of different form factors of these devices. So we're going to be using the PyPortal today, but there are different ones that can be used for all sorts of different kinds of projects. If you're interested in CircuitPython and you want to get involved in the project, there's a contributing link right here. This is a good place to go for folks that want to get involved. There's a list of pull requests and open issues, which are kind of the most basic things that we usually point for folks towards if they want to start getting involved. And the other thing I'll mention, CircuitPython is an open source project, but it is primarily funded by this company, Adafruit. This is their website, adafruit.com. So they are paying the folks who are working on the team full-time, the development team, like Scott, who's in the chat there. They're paying some folks to work on the project part-time, such as myself, both like working on Mondays and nights and weekends and doing this stream now. So they are the folks currently who are paying the majority of the people who are working on CircuitPython as a job. So if you want to help support the project, but you don't necessarily want to get involved in development, one way you can do it is by purchasing hardware from Adafruit. So they sell the microcontrollers, the things that you can plug in and do with the microcontrollers, all sorts of doodads and fun little gadgets. So head there if you would, and you want to help support the project. So let me catch up on the chat, and then we'll actually kind of get going here. So I'm going to scroll this up a bit. Hello to Patrick. Yep, can't stay long, no worries, but thank you for the well wishes. Let's see, I got a little ways to go. So hello to everyone that's here so far. We got Bruce, 2231 Puppy, Tammy. How's it going, Tammy? Thanks for joining in, and congratulations as well on a couple of your streams. I've been checking those out, so keep up the good work there. I'm super excited to see more and more folks starting to stream CircuitPython content. So for folks that don't know, Tammy Makes Things in the chat is over on Twitch as well, streaming similar types of content. So head over there if you're interested in more folks streaming this sort of stuff. Michael, Purples, Bruce, let's see, Scott's here. Thank you to Scott. Leonard LRYT. So we're live, but unfortunately have to go to sleep. No worries. Yep, very late in France. You can catch the video after the fact. And also, that's a good point that Scott pointed out, is I do stream earlier in the day on Saturdays. So I will be back tomorrow morning, and you can catch me there, possibly at a better time for you. I actually did, back when I chose the time, Saturday mornings, that was one of the things I took into account, was I knew that we had some folks in the community that were over in Europe, and that it's very late for them to watch the deep dive. So that was actually one of the inspirations for me choosing the Saturday morning slot that I have been streaming on. Let's see, standard next week. Yep. Yeah. Daylight savings time is this weekend, which is a good note. So next week will be an hour different slightly, but the clock will say the same thing. It's a whole weird thing, but we are at 2 p.m. Pacific time, which is generally how this stream has been referred to, since Scott does it and he's in the Pacific time, is 4 p.m. Central time, which it's very likely that I'll end up saying that more frequently, but those are the same time, and we do have daylight savings time come up, so we will be a little bit different next week. So just be sure to either adjust your clock or check if you're not in a place that does daylight savings time. Then you can adjust the time of day. It'll be an hour different. Zarnlin, yep, just in time. Thanks for tuning in. Ham's Labs, looking forward to see what direction. Thank you. Tammy Makes Things, yep, there's the link. Thank you to Tammy. Drop in that link. Got some follows. Video Mask Circle looks great. Thank you. And I think we're caught up there on the Discord. Let me make a quick scroll through the YouTube chat here. Don't have as much. Dave Odessa, we do need a cat cam. I have plans, but I don't have it set up yet. And then ProtoKit, first time catching the stream. That's awesome. Thanks for tuning in, and I would encourage you to watch the back history of this. If this kind of content is interesting to you, Scott's been doing it for, I think, a little over a year now. And so there's lots and lots of good previously run episodes of the stream. So check those out. And now that I have made it through all of that, I do remember I don't have this showing. Oh, okay. Intros and hello. Somebody did fill in the times for me. I appreciate that. So jumping in a little bit, what are we working on today? I thought it would be fun to do kind of my first episode of Deep Dive, working with some of the stuff that I am working on most frequently on my own streams, which is displayio related stuff. And specifically, I wanted to kind of pick up where I left off actually last week. So for folks that don't know, I stream on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Time. And what I worked on last week was this example right here, which is for the Async IO library. And it was writing kind of like a basic example of using Async IO with displayio controls, particularly touchscreen controls. We were touching buttons and having it affect other stuff that was going on inside of a separate task. So I want to work on another example of this Async IO with displayio concept, but this week I'm going to go a little bit more complex, and we're going to pull in sensor data as well, and we're going to also do some different types of manipulations and use some different widgets that we didn't touch last week. Paul-esque, hi Foamyguy and everyone present. Question, how can I write something in Twitch? If you are on the Twitch page, there should be a chat on the right hand side. I believe it is by default. I think you'll have to make an account. I don't have too much experience with Twitch without being logged in. So I've had a Twitch account for a while now and it just stays logged in. I don't know the exact way it works. So if you don't have an account, this may be different. You might need to create an account and log in. Not 100% sure. But there is a chat usually on the right hand side on Twitch, and you can put messages in there just by typing and then hitting the send or enter or something like that. Which reminds me, let me go ahead and I'll try to pull up the Twitch chat as well and try to keep an eye on it. I will say I generally am pretty good about keeping an eye on one chat. I'm going to try my best to keep up with all of them, but work with me a little bit. Like if I don't respond to you real quick in one place, you could try to ping me if it's something you really want answered, or you could try hitting the Discord again is probably the place where I am most likely to see it. But I will pull this up. Let me pop it out here and then hide chat, pop out chat. There we go. I don't know. Does it want to be? It's definitely muted. I don't know if it will show me the chat if it's paused, so I'll let it play here. And one more second of me staring over here while I shuffle a couple more of these chats around. Okay. Sounds like a good show. Thank you. And how's it going to Dexter as well? Daylight savings is a bit silly name because we're not saving anything, just moving. Yeah. Daylight savings is a silly name, is a silly concept. In my opinion, is all sorts of weird and silly, all the way around. In my opinion. Watching the chats for moderation, I appreciate that, Scott. Still can't say how much I love. Cannot say how much I love Async IO now that I've used it. Yeah, I found it really cool. This was the first real example where I dove into it, but I found it to be a neat way to structure programs. I think, especially interactive programs with the touchscreen, I think, can benefit from structuring the code this way to make the code more clear and easier to maintain. So I like it as well. I don't have too much experience yet, but I was definitely happy with the experience I had so far. Oh, yeah, that's rough. Arizona. Yeah, there's a couple of places I think where they don't like Tammy is saying, like half the state does it and half of the state doesn't. And it depends what city you're in. And there are some places in the world where they have just like decided not to do it like a couple of weeks before it was supposed to take effect. It causes all kinds of weird stuff. Daylight savings time, this is. Basically a 2-hour change if you're in another. Yeah, so I have I'm gonna work on maybe a different type of a setup or something, but I have the chats over here. So if you see me looking off this way, that's why, is because I'm actually looking at the chat windows over here. So the example I want to, this is the one we did last week, and I'll run this real quick. We can see what it does, and then I'll talk about what I'm gonna do this week, which will be different. So let's run this one. I'll have two CircuitPython devices because I have the macro pad running. And let's see, did we keep this? What's in here right now? This is basically simple test for this this sensor, which is plugged into my device, which I'm gonna actually keep because I'm gonna use this sensor here in a minute. Well, in a little while, once we get to that part of our new example. This is the code from last week. And there's an open PR, so if folks are interested in using this code or reviewing the PR or playing around with this to see how I did it, you can find that over on GitHub. If anybody is interested in that, I can drop the link. But this is the code for it here. Also, I'd encourage you, if this particular code here is interesting to you, check out the VOD of my stream on my channel, separate from Adafruit. You can find that VOD on YouTube or Twitch, where I built this, so you can see the history that went into this particular example. But here's what it does. We have a couple of different buttons. We have this blinking circle up in the top left, which kind of represents like an LED, essentially. The existing Async IO examples were made with LEDs, a couple of them. So I kind of took the idea of an LED and put it into onto the display just by drawing a circle and having it turn on and off by blinking. This is the one we made last week. The things that we can do are press the invert button right here, invert color, and as long as we have this button down, then the color of the blinking circle will change. It will go to the invert of what it was. So if I release the button, it's blue. If I press the button, it's like a beige color, because it happens to be the invert of the blue that we're using. And then we also have these two buttons down here, faster and slower, and we can press those and they will increase and decrease the rate that the circle is blinking. So I press faster a couple of times, it's now blinking much faster than it was before. And we can slow it down by pressing slower a couple of times and take it down to a much slower interval. So this one is meant purely as an example. It's not necessarily, a really practical project that does something, but it's mostly just an example for how you can use Async IO with, two things: display IO graphics, like the circle here, as well as GUI, like touch input buttons like this. So that's really what this was meant to do, is just illustrate how to do these things. The thing I'm working on today is a little bit more practical, but still kind of in the same vein of it's mostly meant for an example, not necessarily a finished project. And so the one I want to do today is going to be, we're going to read data from the sensor, and I just chose a random, this happens to be a magnetometer. It doesn't really matter what the sensor is. We're just reading live data from the sensor. We're going to output the data onto the screen, and then we're going to provide 3 switches that can be turned on or off, one representing each of the 3 colors, red, green, and blue. And then our label that is showing our data that's coming from the sensor is going to be turned a certain color based on those switches being turned on or off. So if we turn just the red switch on, our label will be red. If we turn red and blue, then our label will be purple. If we turn like red and green, then it will be yellow. So like those 3 colors will be able to turn on and off and change the color of the label. And again, that is a little more practical than this because we're at least like outputting real data from a real sensor. But I do grant, like, it doesn't matter too much what the color is. This is still mostly meant as an example of how to set the stuff up. Thank you, Scott, for linking the other YouTube there in the chat. Yep, that is my other YouTube account. So that's where you can find me Saturday mornings, as well as you can see the previous videos of my streams, including the one where I created this code that is on the PyPortal right now. Let me catch up a little bit here on the chat. We are not going to work on a datetime library today. Let's see, where's the last one? I think this probably scrolls it on the screen, doesn't it, too? So while I scroll this up, you'll see it on the chat. So yeah, this is where I was. Yep. Not a big fan of daylight savings, losing and gaining. Yeah, totally agree. I think it's just such a shock to just randomly change the change calendar, but Canada, Saskatchewan, they don't do it. Interesting. 13-hour day, clocks in their own cities. Yeah, Zarnaland, there's some cities, yeah, where it's, that's kind of like what Tammy was talking about with Arizona earlier. Thought farm country, yeah, that's kind of a thing I've heard as well, as like farmers want it so they can kind of get up earlier and get to work. I don't know. I think that some farmers have come out and say that it doesn't really help them too much, though. Blocking is awful. At some point, we need to see an RTOS with CircuitPython, and all things that block can be handled nicely. I'd love to see a C-level RTOS that integrates with Async IO and Python. May not be possible. Yeah, Metronome. Funny story about metronomes. Metronomes, I cannot listen to metronomes anymore. Metronomes literally drive me insane at this point. I can stand like 10 or 15 seconds of a metronome, and then I like have to turn it off or leave the area or something. I was in marching band in high school, and one of the things that we did during practice was they would set up a metronome and put it right in front of a like a bullhorn, basically, and it made the most like brain-piercing sound that went through it. I can't even describe it. It was like half beep, half tick. But like metronomes are typically fairly quiet, and so they fed it into this super loud bullhorn, and it made this crazy sound that will never ever fully get out of my head. And so anytime I hear a metronome, it kind of takes me back to that sort of brain drilling thing. So luckily I don't do a whole lot with music stuff anymore, so I don't run into metronomes too much. RTC DST detector. Oh, interesting, Cedar. Do you have a daylight savings time utility for CircuitPython? This one in CircuitPython? Or this is a PDF that shows the conversions, I see. Okay. All right, so let's jump in. I think I'll start with, let's get the controls I want to use. So I think, has this been moved over to here now? So for folks that don't know, the CircuitPython org on GitHub, this is called an organization. Anything that's like github.com/ and then the name here. Sometimes this is a user, an individual user, but it can also be an organization. So the CircuitPython one is an organization, and this is where we have been putting some of our newer displayio widgets. And I think the one I want is in here. Flip input, I think is. Oh no! I get this wrong. Actually, it's not flip input. It is switch round. Round is what we want. That's right. I think there's pictures of it in the docs. Maybe not. Let's see. Switch round. Okay, I think this is it though. So this is one of the displayio widgets. I want to say Kmatch created this. I'm not 100% positive, so I could be wrong. But let's grab the simple test for this, and then it'll make it real clear like what it is. I will overwrite the code from last week's Async IO. And then show the camera. So this is the switch input. So it has a couple of different things which we can control. I'm pretty sure we can control the colors. When the user touches it, it flips, back or forth based on whether it's on or off. There's a little icon in the center that turns into a circle or a line. And I think we can also do the colors. So I think what we'll do is like, we'll make one that's red, one that's blue, one that's green. And then when it's on, it will be that color. And when it's off, it'll be kind of blank like this one is. So let's start by just making the 3 of those, and then we're just going to add until we get to what we're aiming for, which is what I described before. So first, let's look at how this is set up. So we will still initialize the touchscreen. 2030, I'm guessing this is probably XY. Let's see. Yeah. And so there's lots more stuff we can specify. So let's start by pulling up the docs, I think. And we want to look for things like the colors, fill color off. I think we'll keep default fill color on, though. I think we'll do the different colors for each one. So we have our green one, although I think I should make the first one red. So let's go set fill color on PyCharm. Fill color on. This probably takes hex or tuples. Okay, so that made the inside of the circle red. I'm guessing we have maybe outline color or background color. Background color on and off. So let's set that. So maybe we should do a little bit darker red for... No, yeah, darker red, I think, for the background and brighter red for the foreground. And I will mention the colors come through a little bit weird on the camera. Let's see, somewhere I have camera controls. I could do this, which will make the colors a little bit better, maybe, although hopefully it didn't get that much better in this case. We're already fairly bright. Yeah, that doesn't really change it, so I won't mess with it. That's the flash on the camera, but it looks a little orangish yellow here to the naked eye, though it does look red on my end, so that's what we'll go with. And then background color on this one, I'll just do a little bit darker, so maybe like C's. See how that looks? Okay, I think we want it still a little bit darker. That's not that much different. So let's go maybe 9s. That's getting closer, but I still think we could go a little bit darker. And also I put my camera controls over the chats. Let me, there we go, okay. And then it looks like we also have the outline color around the circle. You probably can't see it coming through the screen a little bit, but there is like a little green. Yeah, unexpected maker, it looks red, or it looks yellow. That's true. On the camera, it definitely does. To the eye, though, it does look red. Going to check out Bluetooth MIDI soon. Oh, that should be fun. I actually just learned a little bit about MIDI this week. I had never really played with MIDI before, but the other day, I took it out and played with it on the macro pad a little bit. There's a really, really nice guide. I think Liz made it. That talks about all the details of MIDI and gives lots of really good examples. So check that out if you haven't already, Ham's Lab. As you're coding, describe your workflow in the process environment. I can do that. Environment, I will say it's PyCharm. As far as the process, what I will do is link to this, I think. There's a page that I actually wrote that explains everything I did inside my PyCharm to get set up. So that's the best place instead of me trying to remember it all and relay it. Let's see. Maybe is it Essentials? I don't know exactly which guide it's in. And yeah, feel free to ask questions and such, folks. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to go down rabbit holes and off and look into different things. As you can probably already tell, same kind of energy that Deep Dive had. This page right here, this shows the full setup, everything that I did inside my PyCharm. Probably the most important things are disabling the autosave and installing the CircuitPython stubs. Those were the two things. Oh, and I would say also making a local project. There's like a local project folder on my PC, and then I added a like linked folder that goes to the folders inside the media directory. That way they get pulled in and treated as part of the project, but they're actually stored in a separate place. This makes it so that when I open this project inside PyCharm, even if I don't have a CircuitPy device connected, I'm still able to open it and nothing breaks. If you try to create a project directly on the CircuitPy drive, it will work, and it will work while it's plugged in, but if you ever launch your PyCharm and open that project when your CircuitPy drive is gone, it freaks out because it's expecting to find stuff there and it doesn't find it. So those are the main things I did to set it up. And I really like it. I came into this, I used PyCharm before I ever got to CircuitPython, so I was already familiar with it. I will say it's a little bit overwhelming. There's lots and lots of different things that PyCharm can do. And there's lots of all these little windows all around that will open if you click on stuff around the edges, and there's a ton of different ones that all do different weird things. I will say, like, you don't need most of those things. You can kind of hide it down to pretty much just the file list and the code. That is what I use the majority of time. And then I'll say the one other thing that I use a whole lot, which we can't actually do it in this repo, but I'll do it in this one, is the Git stuff. So like there's a visual commit preview here. So like if we were going to change the code here, change or whatever, it shows up as the change list, and I can like use this nice pretty GUI to decide if I want to commit it. I can look real quick and easy at the differences. I can go down the list and do like, oh, oops, we didn't actually want that one. So you can click to pull the old version back, and you can check on and check off stuff. If you want to save changes locally but not commit them to the repository, you can kind of uncheck them in this box here. So Git, I would say, is the other like huge, really good feature, and at least in terms of my workflow, that PyCharm adds is a nice visual overlay on top of Git that makes it super easy to do all kinds of stuff. So let's see if we can do that outline color. I think that was probably just, okay, outline color on and off. So let's go back to here, outline color on. Let's go, I think we'll just do the same red as the background. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Similar to VCS workspace idea. Found an ESP32 board that has audio line in and out. Interesting. I was wondering if there was any devices with audio line in the other day. Made by Espressive. All right. How's it going, Paul? Let's see. Shulenik? I may have butchered the name. I apologize if so. Thanks for tuning in there on YouTube. So let's make a blue and a green one of these. And let's rename this. This is something else about PyCharm that I really like, is this refactor rename stuff. So like if I want to rename a variable, I can highlight it. And like you could do find replace, right, which works pretty well, but this is actually a little bit smarter. You can highlight it. It's Shift F6 happens to be the hotkey for it. I'm sure there's other ways you can access it. This is the one I use. But we can rename this to whatever we want. So let's say we want red switch, hit refactor, and then this will actually look through not only this code file, but all the rest of the code files in the project. In this case, like, we don't have any other usages because this is the CircuitPy drive. But you could imagine if you're in like a library repo or something, this is really handy to be able to change a variable once and have it go and search through the rest of the code and find all the usages of it. Like this one right here changed, even though I didn't specifically do anything else, and these ones down here as well. So that's another thing that I do really like about PyCharm, is the ability to edit the code and have it go find all the rest of the instances of use of that variable. So let's do a green switch as well. And a blue switch. Oop, 6. And we'll change these around a little bit. I think let's move it closer to the corner. Right now it's at 2030. Let's go like 1010. See how that looks. And then 10x on all of these. And each one will get lower. So I don't know the exact height. Let's just take a guess maybe and say 40 and then like 70. And let's see what that looks like. No. Okay, so we created our switches, but we did not add them to the group yet. So we need to go basically this. There we go. Okay, not far enough. We need more than 30 pixels. We could change the size too, but I do like them being nice and big because it makes them easier to hit. So let's go maybe 60 and then 50 more than that, so 110. Whoops, 110. Visual Studio Code has the same concept of multiple project trees. I gotcha, yeah. I know there's lots of folks that like Visual Studio. We get a fair amount of questions coming to ask about Visual Studio. Oh, okay, so the other thing is we don't have the touch listener stuff, right? Those ones aren't hooked up yet. So we do need to go in our main loop, and here we need to go like elif green switch contains p. Then we go green switch dot selected. It's interesting, selected p. We just call it with the touch point. Blue switch dot contains p. Selected. We'll pass that. Now these should let me. Yeah. Perfect. All right, so we got red, green, and blue switches. The red switch does look a little more orangish, but IRL, it's looking pretty red. The green and the blue come through pretty well. So now we want to make another label, and this label will then kind of dynamically set the color of it based on these other three switches. So let's do that. We need to import label stuff. Let's go from Adafruit display text bitmap label import label. Whoops. Output label equals new label. Dot contains is a really nice attribute. Yeah, we try to. I think dot contains is part of. It's called widget. I think it's the name of the class is. No. Control. We have a class called control, which has the properties that are used for like touch inputs most commonly, and contains is one of them. I like your nice little microcontroller pillow. Thank you. My wife made me this beanbag. I actually have a couple of these beanbags around my table here. I put my wrist on one to use the mouse, and I found it's also really nice for putting devices under to keep them propped up a little bit and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you. I will pass the message along as well, since it was a gift that was made for me. This one, we need to give it a font, so we're going to go terminalio.font, which we need to import. Another nice thing about PyCharm, like control, no, what was that? Alt-Enter, maybe? I do that just out of habit now. I don't even know the right combination. I think it's Alt-Enter. It will let you, it'll fix the imports for you, so you don't have to actually go all the way back to the top and do it and then come back. Text, let's just go hello world for now. Eventually we'll fill this in from the with data coming from our sensor. This one I'm going to place by anchor point 0, 0 I like to use on labels, and then anchor position. We want to put it to the right of all of our switches and towards the top. It doesn't really matter too much beyond that. So let's just say maybe like 100x and then 20y. And then let's add that to our group. My group dot append output label. I'm going to rename my group to main group, just because it's kind of like the name I typically use, main group. Save that. Okay. Let's go a little bit bigger and a little bit farther over to the right. 160. And let's also go scale, maybe like, is 3 too big? Let's see if 3 is too big. Yeah. Well, maybe if we don't scoot it so far. Pretty close. Okay. Eventually we may adjust this anyway, because we'll be showing some different data, but this is good enough for testing. So right now the color of it is white, which would correspond to all 3 switches being on. So all 3 switches being off, I guess, would go to black. I don't know that we want to default to black. Maybe we'll default to a dark gray, and maybe we can still get a little bit of contrast from the screen. Control.contains. Yep, perfect. Thank you for linking that over, Dexter. That is the contains method that the switches are using here, that I'm using, because they extend control. It should. So this is the code through control click. That's the other thing I just did. You can in PyCharm you can control click on things and it will take you inside of them to their declaration wherever it may be. This one happens to be in a library I have installed, it's inside packages, but it would also take you to other files if they were part of your project. So yeah, switch around extends control, which is how we get that contains method. So if you want to make your own interactable widget with displayio, that's one way you can do it. You can extend control, and then that will give you all the logic that this contains thing does. So you then you basically just get your touch event from the touchscreen library, and then check it against contains, and you don't have to worry about the actual details beyond that. So it's pretty nice. So let's default this, I think, to color. I think we want something sort of grayish, but not too dark. So let's see what that does. Are we able to still see it? Yeah, okay. And then we'll set the colors based on which switches are on. So what I'm going to do is make a variable for text color. It's going to actually start as this. I'm going to fill it in here, but of course it won't change yet. And then what we're going to do is when we... So how do we want to do this here? I think... Let's see. I think what we want is a def update color function, and this function will check... Let's see. So I think we'll have one... This will basically check the switches. So if not red switch dot selected. Interesting that we don't have a touch point though, I guess. I guess we could always pass it here. So if red is not, so basically I'm going to try to make if all of them are not selected. This will get us back to gray. And then we'll have different logic if one or more of them are selected. So and not green selected touch, whoops, and not blue selected touch. Control-Alt-L, that's another nifty thing inside of PyCharm. It will format all the code, although in this case the format wasn't really what I wanted, so I did some extras. Okay, that does look a little weird though. I guess it's just supposed to be like that. Okay. So if all of these are not selected, we want to go back to gray. Output label. This is how we change the color. Super easy. Color property equals new color. Text color. Now this is where the logic gets different. So I think, let's see here. Oh, this is probably connected to the wrong device. Yeah, this is the macro pad, which I totally just stopped the thing from running. So this is now connected to my PyPortal. I need to see if some of these operators work how I think. So X, okay, X. If I do this one bitwise, okay, yeah, that's what I want. Perfect. So now basically we're gonna go else, that means at least one switch is on. So we're gonna go text color. I'm gonna start it on black. And then if red switch is selected, then we're gonna go text color. Can you do like bitwise equal? Bitwise equal. Red, so we'll do this. And so then it will start as 0, 0. If this is selected, then essentially it will become FF. It'll become red. And then for each one of these, we'll bitwise again, and it will add those 2 digits of hex. Let's do them in order, RGB at least. It doesn't really matter the order, but that's the way I think about it, so let's do them in that order. I'm going to use the Faust for audio. It directly supports ESP32 and the Sport. It's going to be super cool. I put the project on Hackaday. Nice. Yes, underscores, leading underscores. Sometimes I'm good about it, sometimes I'm bad about it. Sometimes I put it on there and then later decide it probably should be more public. This one I think, though, makes sense. Because it's not meant to be user settable. The program itself is going to change it. The user could change maybe the default, the gray, but... There we go. So now for each one of those, if it's selected, it's going to add those 2 digits. If all of them are selected, we'll get white because we'll be all Fs. If like red and green are selected, we'll get yellow because we'll have 4 Fs. Red and blue will give us pink. I think that should do what we think, what we want. So label, then we're just going to set the color to the new color. And now here we can go... see. I think we just call update color in here. And this is all going to end up getting refactored when we bring the tasks, the Async IO stuff into it, but for now I'm going to write the code essentially just synchronous without any of the tasks. P, we got to pass it the touch point. Yeah, I think, is that all we need? That may be all we need. Oh, we're in REPL. There we go. Whoa. Okay, I think maybe I used selected wrong inside of here. Maybe we can't do this. Maybe we need a different property. That seemed like it changed them, which I don't want to do. Value. Value, property, yeah. Oh, hey, why are these like this? That's interesting. Seems like the docstring might be somehow different than what Sphinx or Read the Docs is expecting. Usually this would be one full column. So I think we actually just want value, and we don't pass touch point. Value. Value. Nope, we still switched all of those. Because I did this here as well, actually. So calling selected like this is causing it to actually move the switch. Makes sense, because that's what we did inside the contains. Yeah, there we go. Now, yeah. Okay. We basically have 3-color control RGB over our text now. We turn them all on, we get white. Red and blue gives us pink. Red by itself gives us red. Red and green gives us yellow. Green and blue gives us teal. Green by itself, blue by itself. All off gives us back to gray. So now we will put, instead of hello world, we'll just put the data that's coming from our sensor. And then after we have that part in, that's when I'm going to refactor this to use Async IO. So this is where we will come back to this code that I kept earlier. Yank a couple of things out of it to set up our sensor. Doesn't matter too much where I do this. Sensor, let's print dir sensor. Let's see, is magnetic the only thing we can access here? Print dir sensor. Magnetic, data rate, operation mode, performance mode. Yeah. That looks like the only one that's actual data. Some of these, like data rate, performance mode, operation mode, these exist, but these are properties, I assume, for setting the way it behaves. Magnetic, though, is the actual data. Oh, range. What is range? So this one I don't have the stubs for, so this one I cannot write like a control click into. What I will do, though, is go to GitHub. And then the docs. Let's look at what range is. Oh, whoops. API reference, this is what I want. Range. Range. Test. Measurement range. I don't know what that means. Rate. I think that's not data, though. Print sensor.range. Actually print. I think you want, yes, yep, Dexter. Button value, you were right. Half assembling my latest project. Just realized I forgot a power switch. Dir, yes, totally. Dir is like one of the things I use most frequently. I got 0. I think that it's not data. So let's stick to magnetic. So let's go here. We'll do it pretty similar to this, but I'll use new lines a little bit more. So let's make a def update sensor data. And really we can go output label.text equals this. And then what I want, though, is not commas. I actually want to do 3 lines. So we'll put new lines between these. And then in the main loop, let's say update sensor data. Ooh, magX is not defined. Ah, yes, we need to do magXYZ Z equals sensor magnetic. Whoops. There we go. And I want less space. There's so much space there. And I don't know where it's getting the space. I don't actually, I've never learned the way that this syntax works. Let's move it over. Yeah. This is probably also cutting off some digits or something. So we're getting less precise data, but that's okay. Yeah. That looks good. I'm going to scoot it just a tad bit more back towards the left. Okay. I'm going to start using, I have this stylus right here, which makes it a lot easier. Can also keep my hand out of the way a little bit better. All right. We have our sensor data. We have our colors. All of that's working. So now let's start refactoring this to use Async IO. Dave Odessa, gotta go. No worries. Thanks for the stream. Yep, thank you for watching. So let's go. I think let's look back at this example. And I will kind of model my new one off of this. Dir, yeah, Dir really is. Sometimes I forget about it, and I'm quick to like go open a browser and pull up the like read the docs or GitHub and look in the actual code. But you can really go a lot faster sometimes with just dir and find out what you need using only the REPL. It's super nice. So let's see, we made, okay, right. So we want to make a coroutine is what these are called for each of the things we want to do. So I think one coroutine will be fetching the current data from the sensor and updating the screen, which we currently have a regular function for, but it's going to become a coroutine. Our other coroutine will be reading the touch input and then checking on all the switches, setting the color according to whatever is in them. And then do we need any others? I think those are the only two that I can think of, at least off the top of my head. And then we'll need state objects to be able to share, whoops, need this anymore. We'll need state objects to be able to share the state between those different coroutines, because the one that is fetching the data, do we? Do we don't? Well, we need to share the label at the very least, because we need to be able to set the text and we need to be able to change the color. Right. Well, we need to, yeah. We'll need to share the label back and forth, because one coroutine, the one that's reading the sensor and changing the text, that one needs access to the text. But the other coroutine that's reading the touchscreen and checking the switches, it also needs access to the label because it needs to change the color. So I think our state object will have the label on it, which in this one we created button state and it held just a true false in this case, and then an integer in this case. And so ours, I think, will hold the label. I'm going to call it application state. I don't know. There's maybe a better name for it. We'll see if we need to share anything else. I don't know. Maybe we would need the sensor? I'm not sure. Thanks, Sass Patrick. Check. Yeah, thank you for tuning in. See you later. How do I explain coroutine? That is a good question. This guide does a better job than I could probably. The way that I think about it, though, is like a function that is meant to be run in an async way. So really, I think about it a lot like the same way I think about a function. Cooperative multitasking. This is the guide that will do a much better job explaining it than I could, most likely. Which actually, I think this is where I even learned last week that these are called coroutines. A task is a kind of coroutine. A coroutine, it can stop in the middle. So it's almost like a function that can be paused and resumed, basically. It's a function that can do some stuff and then pause itself, and then later on the system can come back and like check in and let it resume itself and do some more things again. So it's almost like a repetitive thing more than it is a function, but I think it has a loop inside of it, so I don't know. It's kind of an interesting way to write the code, though, because you end up with a loop inside the coroutine function. What does .dict do? I don't know. .dict on the on which object? So I think what I want, async def. We did before we had blink, which blinked the dots. We were able to make one of those for each dot, and then we had handle buttons, which is what did. Oh, and we need a main as well, actually. Oh, we had monitor buttons. Okay. I think I want to aim a little bit more generally. We're not using buttons exactly. This time we have switches. And I don't think I necessarily want to call it monitor switches. I think what I'll do is let's go a little more generic and say handle touch inputs. Handle touch inputs. I'm also kind of trying to think of like good general names to use for this to be an example that folks could copy and then cut some parts out of, paste new stuff into. So I'm trying to aim a little bit more generic than what I'm actually writing specifically so that it'll be hopefully easy for folks to reuse and still lead to having good code that makes sense. So this is going to definitely take the application state. Does it need anything else? This one... It took the two buttons. Okay, so it will need the switches. Yeah, it will need the switches. So red switch, green switch, blue switch, one switch, two switch. Whoa. Underdict? I'm probably doing it wrong, but 90% of the async functions I've created have a while true loop. No, I think that's right, Linux 203. I think that's correct. That's very, very often is the case. And in fact, in this one that I did last week, we have the while true inside of here. And it makes sense, at least in my mind, it makes sense because our coroutine is going to keep running over time, right? We don't want our coroutine to stop unless we have some way to exit it or something. But generally, we want it to run and keep doing its thing over and over again. Whatever its thing is, we want it to keep doing it. So I do think that does make sense. Yeah, Dexter posted a good example too of an async, which has the bubbles example, which is like moving some circles around on the screen. Dr. Seuss does CircuitPython. Yes, it would be amazing. Yeah. Okay, so basically here, this is where we're going to do the stuff that's currently inside of update color. And so do we pass? Let's see, how did I do? Okay, we just did, we get the touch point inside of here. Okay. while true, p equals, what actually, yes. Nope. Like that, okay. And now I think update color, since we already have this function, p. Although this one doesn't take the switches. I think it should. Or do we just move all of this logic? Maybe we just move all of this logic inside the coroutine. Yeah, actually I think I like that better. Do I? I don't know. Update color is nice because it says more specifically what we're doing. I think I like this breakdown actually. Yeah, the coroutine gets the input from the touchscreen, but then calls a function in order to do the actual logic. That way the logic can happen inside of a function with a different name, and this coroutine would be reusable. Even if you weren't using switches and you were using buttons or something else, you could reuse this part of it and just change out the function that you're calling your own, which sounds, at least in the moment to me, like a pretty good way to structure the code. So let's keep this, but let's add these. I think we would need these. Because I think inside of this coroutine and then ultimately inside of here, we wouldn't be able to access switches unless we pass them in, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, Hope is another one. Yeah, that one's similar to dir. I don't know the exact differences, but that one does list out a bunch of neat stuff as well. Expected 2 blank lines. I don't know why it thinks touchpoint. Oh, I guess because we're not actually using touchpoint anymore, are we? We passed in touchpoint because I was doing that selected thing before, but it turned out that that was actually wrong. Well, okay. So we need to read the switches first, right? Here we're updating the color based on the current value of the switches, but we actually need to do this stuff. We need to check the touchscreen, figure out which thing was actually touched or not. I'll go ahead and cut this. We already got this running. I could probably get back to it if we need to. Sometimes I'm hesitant when I'm refactoring to like cut stuff and delete stuff instead of just copying, but then I end up with extra ones and comment some out, so I'll just peel the band-aid now, we'll cut it, move it. So this is actually gonna set all the switches based on the touch input, then update the color based on all the switches. We no longer actually need this. And one more thing though, I think we'll need to pass in the label. appstate.label. And then we do end up shadows text color from the outer scope. It's probably okay. In fact, we probably don't really need it in the outer scope, honestly. We probably only need it inside of here because we're creating it, setting it to the color we want, and then putting it into the label. We could always access it back out of there if we needed to get it again. Yeah, so honestly, I think we probably don't need this. And instead, maybe here we could just go back to doing it this way, but then it will get updated from here. See. When adding the Adafruit packages in PyCharm, will it hurt to add all of them to the project. I'm not sure what you mean add it to the project, but usually what I do is I will install with pip any of the ones that I want to use. So like display text, for instance, I have installed with pip. Like, I don't know the exact command, but I would have done something like pip install Adafruit CircuitPython. I guess maybe this is the exact command, possibly. I would have done this. In this case, I already have it installed, so it's not actually going to do anything new. But I would have installed that, and I would do that type of thing for all of the libraries I'm using, although you can see here I haven't done it for this driver from the magnetometer. But that's usually what I would do, and I don't... Installing them with pip, there is no real downside that I'm aware of. Like, those are getting loaded on your PC, they're not taking up space on the drive or anything. Is there a number of function parameters beyond which it's better to pass the dict or quargs function instead of individuals, or is it just a stylistic? Is that just a stylistic question, or is there a performance benefit? So I don't know performance-wise. I could not answer that part at all. It does seem like a style thing to me. I know Pylint eventually will complain if you have too many arguments, and so you could theoretically change one or more of your arguments into being a dictionary, or if you wanted to be even more, proper, I guess, you could change it into a class with, particular fields and stuff instead of a dictionary where it's all generic and they can just be any key and any value. You could create an actual class and you could pass that in. To me, I think the line is like, I don't know, somewhere around 5 or 6, it starts getting unwieldy, but also not to the point of like, I don't know, it feels unwieldy a little bit more than like 5 or 6, but also I'll say it also feels unwieldy to like turn it into a dictionary or turn it into an object and then pass the object in. Also feels unwieldy to me, so it's not something that I typically do when I'm just kind of left to my own devices and writing code. But I do grant it does, when you have more and more and more, it does start to make your initializers big behemoths, and it's not the best looking. As far as I know, I swap from lots of parameters as a function input to a class or a dict as a function input when it becomes hard for me to keep track and read lots of inputs. I don't do it for performance, but for Keith, the programmer who's trying to read the code, yeah. But maybe there's a performance benefit to one or the other. Yeah, I'm sure there is some difference. I don't actually know under the hood what it does, but yeah, I would kind of echo that sentiment that Keith says. When I would make that switch, it would definitely be for code readability more than anything else. That would be my primary goal of making that switch. Okay, so I think this works as our handle touch inputs. Let's make async def, let's say read sensor. Read sensor? Yeah, this one, I guess this is gonna get passed into here. Or maybe app state? Yeah, I think actually app state should have self.sensor equals sensor. Sensor. Almost feels like maybe, did these be as part of the app state? I'm not sure. I will say also, fair warning, like, this is all cutting edge stuff. Async IO has not been in CircuitPython that long, and thus far, the only example that I'm aware of CircuitPython Async IO with display stuff is this one that I wrote last week. And I don't claim to be an expert on any of these things, so it's very possible there are better ways to do what I'm doing. We are very much like learning along together right here. So if it ends up being the way, certain ways I'm doing this are not the most clear or don't end up being the most efficient, that's totally possible. Ultimately, I'm hoping we get an example that is clear, good code that's reusable and is relatively efficient. That's where I'd like to end up. But fair warning, if you're trying to copy the code live or anything, like, we might not be there yet. But yeah, stuff may still change. App state, we pass in, whoa. Got the cats throwing down again. Function parameters rather than a dictionary is somewhat easier for beginner programmers to understand. Yeah, I would agree with that, C. Grover. Regular function parameters don't require knowing as much stuff. You have to know a little bit more to change it to an object or a dictionary. Function has 47 parameters. Maybe it's time to think about it. Yeah. That's a good question. I don't know the answer if it matters into Python itself. That would be a good thing to find out, though. I do think it's a good question. I know, like I said, I know Pylint does complain eventually if you have too many. I have no idea what the cutoff by default for Pylint is, and it may be configurable also. I don't know that either, but so, you know, at least that tool does think there is some benefit to keeping it lower rather than higher. But whether that's efficiency or code readability, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, cat cam will need to be an action cam. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is set a couple of them up around a few of the spots where they hang out. Mike, there's 2 cats here. One of them tends to stay up in my wife's office a lot more often than not. The other one tends to run around and act all crazy. Neither of them really just hang out and chill right near my desk, kind of like Scott's cats do. So there are a couple places where the stripy cat, that's the boy who runs around more crazily usually, there are a couple places where he hangs out. So we might be able, if we put a couple cameras, I can probably pull it up on my computer and we might be able to see him some of the time. But I don't have just an easy place where I can set it right by me. He doesn't really hang out in one spot right by me very long. One thing we're missing, I know I'm like halfway in between writing the second one right now, but I just happened to notice this. One thing we're missing though is the sleep thing. Yeah, we need this. Find the buttons one though. This is closer to buttons. Okay. Import that. And I'll go ahead and put it here as well before I forget. This will be where we read the data and update the label. So sensor label, update sensor data, app state, sensor, app state, label. Okay. This one's going to loop over and over, read the state from the sensor, set it into the label. This one's going to loop over and over, get the touch event, check each of the switches, set them true or false according to whether they were touched. Then update the color based on which ones are true and which ones are false. That sounds right to me. One thing we'll do is we added this, so let's change that to label. This sort of makes the code a little bit more reusable as well. If you're using a magnetometer, you could switch in your own code. Like if you had one that's not specifically the LIS3MDL, you could initialize yours here with this name. And then if it is a magnetometer, then it will have this magnetic property. And so you could actually reuse this code just by changing the sensor. You could also switch to a totally different kind of sensor, and then you would just be putting different stuff into the label. Okay. I think what we need next is our main. I'm going to steal the main, I think, from here. We now have an application state, which is going to get our sensor and our output label in that order. No, other order, wrong way. Sensor. Yeah, should be better. Okay. Let's not call it this though. I hesitate to call it that because that's the name I used in the functions. It's maybe not the end of the world, but it's probably best if we don't shadow it. Let's see. Moving parameters to a class is my holy grail as a newbie. Generally, things are dictionaries under the hood in Python anyway. Oh, that does make sense, I guess. Yeah, that code in shared bindings is very dictionary-like. So even if you have different parameters under the hood, you're ending up with a dictionary anyway. Cooperative multitasking means you don't have to limit the screen updates to one thread. Yeah, I think that's true. Dexter? I don't know if that's a question or a statement. I think that's true, though. I think we'll be able to update the screen from different coroutines. In this case, we're not really changing the screen at all. We're not updating the screen from this touch inputs. We're reading the touch event, and we're looking at stuff on the screen to determine if the touch event's in it, but we're not actually changing. Oh, no, we are. We are changing the color inside of here. Yeah, so we are updating. I would say maybe there's a case to be made where it might be better. It might make more sense to only update the screen from one coroutine. That could be possible, and that's a lot more how like Android is structured. In Android, only the main thread, quote unquote main thread, is the only one that's allowed to change the screen. Haven't sort of planned this whole thing out, but it could end up being the case where that might make more sense from a code organization perspective and from a like not updating the screen as much unnecessarily. I don't actually know for sure, but all right, so we made a state. We need to create the tasks. So we will have a touch input task equals async async create task, and then this takes a function. Takes calling a function. So this is handle yeah. 3 switches, red, green, blue, and an app state. What we gave. Okay. I think you want to be careful about not updating the same screen object from more than one coroutine. It could be possible. I do think one of the things that it does explain in this guide, though, is that while it feels like things are running at the same time, they aren't actually. They are actually still sequential. So I don't believe that there is actually risk of two things trying to update the screen at the exact same time. I think, where did it say? I know that it talked about that in here. Back in the overview, maybe? Ah, here we go. Race conditions, yeah. I'll drop this link here as well. This one explains, though, that they are technically still sequential and that you shouldn't have a problem with race conditions, if I understood it correctly, which is possible I didn't, but that was my understanding based on that little section there. So we got our touch input task. We need a, let's go with, what do we call the other ones? Like sensor data? So let's call this one just sensor task, I think. Sensor task. Async IO create task. This one will be, what do we call that? Read sensor? Yeah. Read sensor. And this one just takes the application state, so we give it that. And then we do what? Collect, I think it is, or something. Oh boy. Create all our tasks. Gather, not collect, it's gather. Is this inside of main still? Yeah. Okay. And of course our tasks are differently named, so we'll do those. Let's say touch input and sensor. Oops, task. Proteins switch only when you await. So they don't, it will never actually run both at once. A nice demo with switches. Hey, how's it going, K-Match? Got a lot to learn about async. Yeah, me as well. That's part of my motivation for playing with it during the streams, is to get more familiar with it myself. So definitely part of that same club. Imagine that you could get weirdly hard to debug behavior depending on the sequencing between coroutines. Possible. Could be true, but I don't totally understand Async IO yet either. Yeah, I am with you. I do not know yet either, but I'll keep a lookout for it, and that's another part of my motivation for writing this code out today, is to try to discover stuff like that. If it turns out that we do run into trouble, I'll keep a lookout for it, and then we'll figure out how to structure it better. Hopefully avoid it. You were mentioning earlier where to look for the widget docs for anyone interested in making new widgets. Yeah. Thank you for linking that, by the way. If you want to make your own widget, kind of like this touch, this switch that we're using here, this is a custom widget, and this link that Kmatch just dropped in the chat is the sort of page that walks you through the process of creating your own one of those custom widgets. So it's a really good resource. Thank you to Kmatch both for linking that, and actually I think authoring the majority of it originally as well, I believe. So we gather those. Do we need anything else after gather? Nope, doesn't look like it. Not in main. So the other stuff that we'll do is show our group and then basically start our main coroutine. So we're not gonna have a while true. We will start main, and I'll go ahead and move down this just so the code is structured the same as the other one. It doesn't really matter. This could be up there. It wouldn't make a difference, I don't think. All right, so let's see if this works. I'm sure I have done something wrong. I'm sure it will very likely not work the first time. Oh. Yeah, okay, so we have no touch. That's better than I thought, though, honestly. We got farther than I thought. I figured we would get a crash, to be honest. So the fact that we made it to running and just have a logic error, it's not doing what I expected, it's actually pretty good. Why is it not doing what we expect? So let's check the basic stuff. Inside of main, we gathered. Part of gather, we passed in touch input task. This is handle touch events, which wants an extra line. These are mad because they shadow the outer name. I don't think that should cause it to break. So if we print inside handle touch, is this actually happening? Yes. Oh, but it only once. And then this fails. We are crashing. We are crashing, but we're not crashing so bad that it can't continue. We're crashing only bad enough. So that's actually one thing that you will have to be careful with when it comes to cooperative multitasking. It looks like if one of your tasks crashes, it does not necessarily crash your whole program. Other stuff could continue working. So in our case, our handle touch inputs has crashed, but our update sensor data has not. So it's continuing to run just fine. That is interesting. I did not realize that was the way that worked. So that's good to know. Yeah. Bonus I found with Async IO, I know when I'm about to give up control with a wait. That's a good point as well. Yep, you get to control when those other things are going to step on your toes, basically. You could say, okay, I'm ready for you to step on my toes now, rather than just doing it whenever it feels like it. Linux 203 posted an example of a Async IO example. Thank you for sharing. Nice. Oh, I like the way you did tasks.append and made a list and then used the star. I kind of like that, instead of having one big giant gather call. Happened to me just today. Crash one coroutine. Yeah. I don't know about CPython. I haven't actually played with Async IO in CPython. A tiny bit, but not very much. So why do we crash in here? Let's see. I think 113 is that? Okay, but that's just our gather. Line 54, handle touch inputs? Okay. None type isn't subscriptable. If P? Do we need if P? Because P would be none if nothing was being touched. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. And it is actually working now. So we were really close, actually. Actually surprised how close we were. I'll take this back out. We don't need to spam this anymore. Do we want to only update colors if there was a P? That will save us a little bit of resetting back to the same color, I want to say. Yeah, but we still do change colors whenever we need to. So it doesn't matter too much, but this does save us from all the iterations where we didn't touch anything we were previously calling update color. We don't actually need to. Okay. Yeah, so this is back to working. I'm actually pretty stoked. Surprised we got it as easily as we did. Feel like this means I'm starting to learn the ways of the Async IO. Let's add in something else. There is, this is analog devices, ADT74 or something temperature sensor. So there's a temperature sensor built on to the PyPortal. Let's grab data from it as well. Just bring more stuff into the mix. Again, I'm kind of just trying to add more stuff and build up good examples. So I don't have a specific need for the temperature, but if I can add another sensor into the mix and figure out how to do it and what problems it comes with, then we might as well. So really what I'm looking for is the name of the library, which I guess will be the same as the sensor probably. Cool. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for really. Circup, for anybody who doesn't know, Circup is a super easy command line, about as far away as you can get from touch, but command line interface for installing things on your CircuitPython device. You do have to run circup install if you want to install though. So this is kind of like pip, but for your CircuitPython device. This is kind of the way that I install everything nowadays. So we have that. Let's also grab the simple test for that, and then we can gank a little bit of code out of it. Should be able to switch it to Async IO sleep instead of the zeros, you mean? So we have Async IO sleep 0, like these ones. Let me also catch up. Looks like I'm behind the chat. Okay, here we go. Was hitting array index out of bounds condition in one task, so NeoPixels did an update after a while. Async IO.gather awaitables, return exceptions false. Ooh, I don't know. Return exceptions. That's a good thing to check into, though. If that is in our async IO as well, then maybe you could pass that and have it change the behavior for when one task crashes. Interesting. I wonder if the switch has time.sleep in it for the animation. It does, I want to say. Either time.sleep or using like time.monotonic, maybe? It does have some way to wait, though, I'm pretty sure. It seems like it's working smoothly, though, actually. Or is it? Maybe it's not. No, it is. Yeah, I definitely saw it there. There's a couple parameters you can do also to change the animation, I think. So I guess this would be inside selected, probably. Yeah, which calls animate switch. So let's look inside of animate switch. Ooh. Okay, so when you highlight a thing and then Control F, it pre-fills. That's nice. So not time.sleep, but yes, recording a time and then checking monotonic to see if it's time to change again yet. Well, maybe. Yeah. Position, easing. Position. There's a couple of different ones of these functions as well. So this is like what's controlling the in between animation. Like it speeds up at the beginning and then slows down at the end. I think there's an overshoot one as well. There's a couple others of these where you can swap them out and get slightly different animation effects, which is really nice. This is all stuff that Kmatch made as well, I believe. So if folks are interested in this, I think Kmatch popped up in the chat a little while ago. This is a widget that he created. Fantastic how quick we got to add it in. That's a nifty library. Yeah, fully agree. Mag updates pause briefly when the animation is active. Ah, I see. Yeah, they do. That's true. Okay. So while we are animating, that's actually stopping our coroutines from running. But the thing that could happen is the switch widget could be rewritten to make use of Async IO. I don't know if there's an easy way where it could be either or. So maybe it would be like creating a new widget that's like switch round Async IO version. Or maybe there's some way it could be either or. You're gonna have both logics in here. But if that were done, then we would be able to still be running the other coroutine, in this case, the one reading the sensor, while the animation is running. That's kind of like the next layer, I think, of this Async IO stuff is right now, all of our widgets were created without this Async IO model in mind, but we could actually start making them with the Async IO model. It could be using the coroutines itself internally, I assume. Those can be functions on a class. Add a light level sensor to control the screen brightness. I could probably do that next time, I think. I don't think I have a light sensor pulled out and ready to go, and I don't want to go digging through my boxes to find it right now. Circuit install requirements works too. That's a good tip. Actually, I don't think I realized that you could do the requirements file. That's pretty nifty. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff that happens in the animation of this, what Scott's talking about up there, where it adapts to the frame rate. Trying to set up for Foamyguy slash Async IO installed Circuit, but when I issue... So for one thing, I'll say if you're trying to install, this is to Paul in the chat there, Paul SK. If you're trying to install specifically my fork, the Foamyguy fork of Async IO, I don't think you can use Circuit to do it. I don't know for sure, but Circuit I think is pulling out of, well, by default, Circuit is definitely pulling out of the published Adafruit library bundle, which will have the Adafruit fork of that repo, not the Foamyguy one. I don't know if there's a way you can pass it a flag or something to tell it to use a different repo. If that's possible, maybe you could install mine. So yeah, just keep that in mind. If you're trying to install specifically mine, you, I think, will just have to manually like go to GitHub. You could either download it with the green button, or you could clone my fork and then copy the code out of there. I'm not sure if you can do it with Circuit. There may be a way, but you would definitely need some kind of flag. Yeah, Async IO sleep it could do inside of the widget. Could not find a connected device. I will say though, that issue that I was talking about should not be related to what you're doing. You, at worst, I would think this would install the Adafruit Async IO instead of the Foamyguy one, and that's what I would expect to happen. But what you're seeing is it actually says it can't find a device. And you have an unexpected Maker Pro S3. See it as TTY USB 0. I'm not sure how Circuit finds the device. Maybe make sure that the drive name is CircuitPy. Oh, there's a light sensor built in. Oh, is that what the hole is for? Yeah, okay. There's a hole on there. We can maybe add that part in. Yep. Take it easy, Mark. Thanks for stopping by. Just did a pip3 install on Circuit and it went okay. All right, nice. Let's see, I have a thing, but this was in this room, I think, here, yeah. Okay. Let's see, where were we at here? So I was gonna get 80 something. Is it still copied, maybe? Or am I here? I'm here already, okay. Examples. All right, so we already have I2C. We will need to import it. Let's do that. This is the initialization. We should probably call these different things, though. Sensor should be mag sensor. Here's a list of all the things it found that it wants to change. It's good to double check and make sure it's not going to change stuff in other files that we don't want it to. Probably we should call it mag sensor here. And then temp sensor. I will write this. I will mention we're getting close to 7 p.m. my time, Central Time, and I know Deep Dive generally went about 2 hours. I sometimes go a little longer than 2 hours, so I'm going to keep going for now, but I probably will be stopping within about the next, probably less than another full hour. I may go 20 or 30 minutes or something. It'll just depend on where we get with this. Mostly what I want to do is get the second sensor put in, and then I'll probably stop after I do that. So if folks are like interested in the 2 hour window specifically, we're coming up on that. And if you're heading out, that's cool. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you that watched and stuck with us, especially through the rocky beginning there. But I am also going to keep going for a little bit longer at least. I don't typically go over 3 hours on Saturdays, which is when I normally stream. I usually go between 2 and 3. And I may end up going on the shorter side now that I'm doing an extra day a week, but just kind of play it by how I'm feeling in the moment. And right now I'm feeling like trying to get the other sensor set up, so I'm going to do that. Mag sensor, temp sensor. But let's call this temp sensor. I could have done refactor, but we only have it in 2 spots, so I'll just copy paste the second one there. And I think for now I'll just handle it inside of the same read sensor. This one's nice and generic, read sensor. I guess we could call it read sensors. So we're going to be doing 2 now, but beyond that, I think it's okay to keep pretty much there. And maybe what we'll do is split these off. So we'll have update mag. Will we? No. Yeah, I think we'll keep them in one function for now, actually. Because I don't want to make a second label. I actually just want to reuse the same label. And I don't want to reset the text over it after I already set it this iteration. The easiest way for me to achieve all of that is just do it inside of here as well. Again, though, like, it's possible that there's a better way to do this, and given more time to sit down and refactor it and plan it out, I might end up landing on a different solution. But for now, I think I want to do this one. Oops. There we go. So we set all of the mag sensor in it, and then now let's get the temperature also. ADT.temperature, nice and easy. So I'm gonna go string equals variable, a new line, another variable. So itself, the first one is itself. Whoops. The next one is the new value, which is going to be, we're actually going to have 2 sensors. Mag sensor, temp sensor, sensor, temperature. Then after we've done that, we put the entire string onto the label. Put our temp sensor onto the application state. That means it gets passed into here. But it also means it gets passed to read sensors, this one, application state, where it then gets passed to update sensor data, and then actually read. This is still mad because I've shadowed the names. All right, there we go. I don't know, is that, I guess, probably, must be Celsius? I don't know which thing is the actual sensor. Is it this thing? Yeah. I can get it to go down because my skin temperature happens to be a little cold right now. My finger's a little cold. And so we got down from like 30 down to 26 there. And if I let go, then it'll slowly go back up to room temp. Let's see here. Let me catch up on the chat. Make sure you regularly update Circup. Yep. That's a good point as well. I think there's also a message now. If you have a relatively recent Circup, it has a check when you run it that will check and see if there's a newer version. It'll print out a message for you. The old, if your one is too old though, then it doesn't have that yet because it wasn't put in until more recently. In a perfect world, it'd be nice to separate the sensors into their own coroutines. I agree, C. Grover. I think ultimately, given more time, I probably would try to separate this to where each sensor got its own coroutine, I think. And or if not each sensor getting its own coroutine, at a bare minimum, I probably would do at least like different function here for each one. So like update mag sensor data and then update temp sensor data. Maybe these could be functions and the coroutine calls it. But yeah, I would probably split it out more. I just don't want to change too much of the code, and I do want to use one label, and I don't want to reset the text in the label multiple times in the same iteration. Which are all kind of constraints I just added on myself. We totally could, and I believe it would work, but those are some things I want to try to do, and therefore I am going to stick with it all in one for right now. Yeah. I do like this sort of example, though, that you showed, where you've got the separated ones there. Pip install upgrade circuit. Yeah, that will update your circuit. Grade flag on pip should. We're pretty good already, and we can change the colors. I think this will probably just be working already. Yeah. Okay, so that is working. I guess we'll throw a C on there for Celsius. What is that? We could turn off some of this. This, I noticed, is printing every time. I don't really need that part anymore. All right. Seems to be pretty good. What does... Somebody, was it C. Grover, maybe, or Dexter, one of the two? I'm not sure which one for sure, sorry, but somebody mentioned using this, using the light sensor to affect the brightness. Looks like brightness is a float. 1.0 is must be all the way. Brightness. That get darker? Okay, that one definitely got darker. Let's throw that one in as well. Again, I'm gonna, I think, just tack on more stuff into the coroutines I have now. But I do grant it probably ultimately would be good to separate them out. Control Shift. Does anybody know by chance offhand the way to use the light sensor? Or even what the light sensor is? Maybe is it just analog? Just a plain analog in pin? Light? The pinout space? What? So an ambient light sensor. Yep, board.light. Can read it as an analog value. Okay, so that's pretty easy. We can go CircuitPython Essentials. There's an analog page in here. You can basically just do the same stuff. go light sensor. Whoa. Go. No, I don't necessarily need the temperature accurate to 4 decimal places. We could totally chop that down. I just threw the straight value I got off the sensor in there. Let's create an analog in, get voltage. Okay, so let's just, I think let's just print it to start with. And we could do that inside of, I think, read sensors. Actually, we're not really updating to the screen. I mean, we're going to change the brightness of the screen. I think it makes a little bit more sense actually to do it outside here, though, in the coroutine directly. And it doesn't really matter if we do it before or after we do the other ones. I'm going to add one more of these to my state. Oops, got the comma. Which should be designed like this to keep the animation looking live. You may miss some of the animation feel if you're doing other computing. At least the animations will compute with a known time, yeah. Light sensor, thank you, Carter. This is the part of the schematic which has our light sensor. So we gave it to state inside of our coroutine. We're reading it off a state, printing it. So we should start seeing those show up in the REPL. Yep. And if I... I don't know if it will work how I was thinking. Because honestly, we're not... I know you don't have the camera anymore. We're not getting... they're a little bit different. When it's covered, it looks like I'm getting 0.04-ish, but occasional ones spiking up into the 0.05s, and occasional ones spiking lower into the 0.03s. I even saw a 0.06 there as well. And with no finger covering it, we're in the 5s, 0.05s, 0.06s. There's relatively little difference, though, honestly. Biggest thing is these seem to get down into the 40s, but some of them are still poking back up into the 50s. I'm thinking... yeah. We're on, like, the very, very low end of the capability here. There's really, really minor difference between covered up entirely with my finger versus not covered up at all and just absorbing the light ambient in this room. if I shine a light on it, which is what I just did here, we can get much higher numbers. And if I really get the light right up in it, we can get even up above 1 or 2. But the ambient light, we're really splitting hairs down at the bottom end of the range here. We could still probably map it and give it a range of brightness. Since they're somewhat directional. Need to turn the output to a scale of 1 to 255. The hard part about turning it to 1 to 255, though, is we don't, like, technically our range is 0 to, I guess, probably 3.3, or whatever the voltage after the regulator is. But we're not really using that full range. The actual range of, like, what we legitimately get without shining extra light on it is very, very small. Like, maybe 0.04 on the low side and, like, 0.058-ish on the high side. We could map just that range, but then if we dip below it, or if we actually have more light, like what I'm afraid is, if I put that code in to map it to 0 to 255 today, right now, it's about 6:15 p.m. my time here. The sun is like on the way down, but not all the way set yet. If I put that code in right now, it will work for this range. And we could set it up to where brightness, like full brightness, 0.58-ish goes to full, and then 0.04 whatever goes to, 10% brightness or something. We could set that range up. What I'm afraid of, though, is like I'm going to turn this thing on tomorrow morning when the sun is actually out, and my range might be a little bit higher, right? Then tomorrow morning when the sun's out, we might be getting like 0.5 on the low side and 0.8 on the high side or something, and that's going to change the math in the range. Which is not to say that I can't do it. We definitely could, and we could make a way to adjust it. But I think I want to probably hold off. I think I want to come up with something different for the brightness. Yeah. Because I think I want to, if we're going to hook it up based on the brightness in the room, I want to be able to use like more of the range. We're so close together on the low side and the high side that we would have to clamp it super duper far and just look at one little sliver of what's available. Which means that if the conditions in the room change just a little bit, then like we're always going to be all the way on. Because if we wake up tomorrow and turn this on, and with the sun out and shining, the low end we're getting maybe is 0.55 or whatever, which is kind of the high end we're getting tonight, then we basically be full brightness. Maybe add an awaitable selected method. Okay, so yeah, that's back to the idea of implementing Async IO inside of the widget. One way that we could have it support both maybe is have a different method for selected that's meant to be awaited, which I do like that idea. If it works that way, that's a good idea. Dexter, thank you. Foamyguy created a project folder in Windows 11, ran VS Code, started terminal, ran pip3 install circup. This went successful. And then also install Async IO, which does also look successful to me, at least as far as I can tell. I can't blow it up super big, but it looks like it worked to me, so nice. Map range, yeah, map range, the function to do it is right there. Thank you, Linux 203. That's definitely the function we could use. And Zarnalin as well, I think, talking about the same concept. We definitely can use the map range. I think the problem, though, that I'm seeing is that because we're not using the full range of the sensor, and in fact, because we're using such a very, 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 very small section of the full range of the sensor, if we choose values to map it to tonight, I think they're not going to apply tomorrow, honestly. Or I think they're not going to apply in different lighting conditions is the root of it. This is such a minuscule portion of the range. Like I think we would end up having to come back whenever we ran this in the future and adjust the values that we're mapping the range to. Maybe we could make some scheme where it's like there's a configuration mode and you like cover it all the way up and then you uncover it and it records the minimum and the maximum, and then it could base it off that, so it could be dynamic. But that is a little more in depth than I do want to get into for right now. Need to remember, yeah, it's the voltage being read from the pin. That's true. dx dt to the rescue. Might not be a linear scale. Isn't brightness hard to make feel linear because the eyes are nonlinear? You could do simply a mapping of highlight adjust, low light adjust. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's what I'm kind of describing, but I want to, I don't know, call it stubbornness or something. I want to try to come up with a way where there's not these values that I would need to change based on the ambient environment. It would make a good example, but the problem with, I think, sharing it as an example is then somebody else would set it up and it would appear to not work. They would run the code, not necessarily understand it, and say, hey, the light sensor's not working because my brightness is not changing. When in reality, like, maybe they just need slightly different values for these things that go into the mapping, which we could try to add comments and instructions and tell them to do it, and that's totally cool as well. But I want to think of something different, basically. I want the example to hopefully work the same for everyone without having to adjust any values, if possible. So if there's a way we could do that, like dynamically, like I was talking about, maybe they do a setup where we're like, okay, 1, 2, 3, ready, set, go. Put your finger over the sensor for 4 seconds or whatever, and then they put it over, and it takes readings and it stores them, and then it's like, okay, ready, set, go. 1, 2, 3, take your finger off, and it records more readings and it saves them, and then it uses those dynamic values. Something like that maybe could work, and then you wouldn't have to adjust them. But that's also a little bit more than I want to do right now, so I don't think we're going to do it. It's too slow to type the examples. Yeah. No worries. Yeah, I think what I'll do actually is let's back out of the light sensor for now. Let's go back to no light sensor, and I'll come up with another way. You know what would be nice too, though, is like maybe we could have some other control on the screen. What would be really cool is if we had a slider bar. If we could have a slider bar on the screen, and you could scroll it like all the way to the right for max brightness, all the way to the left for min brightness. Then it just works the same for everybody, and it gives us another interactive bit to write some code around. Yeah, I think that actually, slider bar, that might be what we ultimately do. But I don't think there is... Oh, who did I see made a slider bar? I have seen a slider bar somewhere. It was somebody else did a stream. Somebody else in the community did a stream. Only like 1 or 2. Gosh. Okay, they made a whole framework. They did. This is slowly coming back to me. Who was that? It's on a blank. Somebody made a whole like application framework. I think they made it for a watch they were working on. And as a demo of their framework, they did a stream one day and they showed a slider bar. Oh, it's killing me that I cannot come up with the name right now. Wonder if we just... I think we'll get mega lucky on Google. CircuitPython... display framework? Joey Castillo. This is not who I was thinking of, but this is also a person who made a watch. And it looks like some kind of GUI display framework. I've not looked into this one. This is actually a very similar concept to what I'm thinking of right now, though, that the other person made. So we did actually get pretty close with Google, but that's not the one I was thinking of. Anyway, I won't sit here and search through it all right now. I'll try to come up with that though, and if I can figure out who that was, I'll share the link next time, and maybe we can go find their slider bar. Maybe, okay, one more try. Let's see if we're gonna spin the Google wheel one more time. What if we go CircuitPython slider widget? Motorized camera. Maybe slider widget. Oh hey, here's one on PyPy. Posada, okay. This was Jose. Okay. I didn't know Jose made this. I don't think I've seen this one before. This looks like what we need, though. So I'm glad I gave the Google machine one more spin, actually, because we could use that one, maybe. Tech, it's TG Techie? I think it's TG Techie. GitHub, TG Techie. Jonah, I think is TG Techie's name. Yeah. This is it. TG GUI. This is the framework. They did a stream one day. They showed an overview of this framework and how to write code for it. And during the stream, they showed the widget, which was a slider widget. So we made it there. I don't know if it's TG slider or something, or if it's maybe is it part of GUI? Do the widgets live inside of here? I'm not sure how the project works. Oh, Qt. It looks like maybe you could write code that would also run on CPython. It does have widget, styled widget. Layout stack, prelude. What would prelude be? Not sure what that is. Anyway, TG Techie, this is who that was. I have no idea if that video is still out there. It was a fascinating look, though, at this framework that Jonah has created. And I'm pretty sure that there was a slider in it. But actually, now that I found this one that Jose did, looks like about a year ago, maybe we'll try this one out and then get it up to, if there's anything we need to update for new CircuitPython or stuff like that, we'll get it all updated, and then maybe we could pull this into CircuitPython.org as well. Jose has been a little bit less active lately, but did do a bunch of work on the widgets and stuff with me a little while back, and is one of the members of the CircuitPython.org. Yeah, Joey Castillo, Zarnalin, Joey Castillo is the one that did the Castillo watch. How's it going, Johnny? Yep, looks like I didn't check the chat for a little while, but Scott was right. TG Techie is who did that GUI framework. Maybe just display the light sensor value and don't use it to change anything. We could do that. Definitely could do that. All right. Yeah. Joey Castillo is who's working on the watch stuff. The Casio watch stuff. TG Techie was also working on a watch, but not, I don't think it was like the Casio clone watch. It was more like a smartwatch, honestly. I think it had a little LCD screen. There's watch software, watch 2.0 PCB, watch. Looks like this one is the one most recently updated. See a photo or anything though. I think this watch though that Jonah was working on is why he created the framework and then ultimately did that stream and showed the slider. So that was down a bit of a rabbit hole, but I encourage folks, if you're interested in displayio and widgets and frameworks and things and ways to write displayio code, I encourage you to take a look at PGGUI, it turns out was the name of it. Because this is also kind of an interesting framework to build applications with. Yeah, that's one thing we could do, the progress bar to output it. Although the progress bar, then we do still have a similar issue of like, because we're using such a small range of the actual sensor value, we have a similar problem with the progress bar. We have to decide what number maps to the full progress bar and what number maps to the empty progress bar. And if we choose the full range, then because our actual sensor is using such a small portion of it, our progress bar will be mostly empty the whole time. If we use a much smaller range, then our progress bar could look full sometimes. We run into that same problem I was describing earlier, where if the ambient light changes, those values that we map to the full and the empty would need to change as well. So those would have to be variables that get updated or something like that. I do like, though, printing it on the screen. I think we'll maybe add it into the label and change the scale. We probably need to go a little bit smaller. We'll add the light sensor there, and then I would like to maybe make a slider control on the screen, which you can slide back and forth, and then it does the brightness. But I think I'm going to hold that stuff for tomorrow. So we're at about 2.5 hours now. I got the second sensor put in. We started looking at the light sensor, but I think I decided that this is how I want to do it. Show it on the screen, on the label, and then add a slider that will control the brightness. So light sensor and brightness will be decoupled. They won't actually be together, but it will be a third sensor that we're reading and showing the value of. And then we'll also have a fourth input being that touch slider, which will then affect the brightness. And I think I'll do that stuff tomorrow, though. I'm ready to hop off for now and get some food and do some other stuff. So I super appreciate everybody who is watching. Thank you all for tuning in and hanging out in the chat, talking back and forth. Yes, TG, Paul SK, that is the, I realize I pointed over there. Maybe I should point outwards at the camera. But yes, that is the watch. I believe that's the watch. Oh, that looks like somebody found the stream. Thank you, C. Grover. Thank you to Scott for doing all the deep dives before this, being one of the major inspirations for me streaming at all. And then also, of course, for giving me the opportunity to continue the deep dives. Thank you to everybody else. If you want to see the conclusion of this exciting example code experiment, check out tomorrow. I'll be on at 10 a.m. Central Time, which is about, what is it? It is... So 5.5 hours would get us to midnight my time, and then it's 10 hours after that. So 15.5 hours from now, whatever time zone you're in 15.5 hours, I will be back streaming, but I will not be on the Adafruit account. I'll be on my own. So Foamyguy_Twitch is where you can find it. And if you come to the Discord, the live broadcast chat Discord, which we have on the stream here, I always put links in when I start. So I'll link the YouTube and the Twitch in that chat when I get going, and I think I will pick up this project and work some more on it tomorrow morning. So thanks again, everybody, and